So I had to talk about this story. It's Fun Friday, and I wanted to cover something that wasn't about Bionicle. So we're focusing on something completely different. And I kind of relate to this because I'm a cynical person at heart in a lot of ways. I know I don't portray myself that way here on YouTube, which I guess just goes to show you that not everybody is who they seem on YouTube. But also, I don't portray myself that way because I want to say I'm naturally a pessimist, but I want to be a more optimistic person. And I think that the internet is a very good place to be optimistic, or at least outwardly optimistic, right? Because I don't want to be pessimistic. I don't want to create that air of just bad vibes, right? So, this video is specifically about Amazon. It's about some other things too, and more specifically, it's about AI, which might be kind of the first time I've touched on this. I know I briefly talked about the Lego AI thing, which I have my whole issues with, but why I wanted to talk about it here is because it shows so many flaws with the system that we're currently using, and of course, unfortunately, exploits, well, underpaid labor. So, if you don't know me, by the way, my name is Skybird. Hi, welcome to the channel. It really would help, and I'd appreciate it if you do like and subscribe. But even if you don't, thank you for lending me your eyes and ears for, I don't know, 20 minutes or so. That said, the reason I wanted to talk about this is because if you don't know me as a person, I would consider myself a leftist, if that matters, progressive, and generally just kind of into, I don't know, being like morally pretty cool, pretty chill, pretty relaxed. And so I like people being paid fairly and not lying to consumers. Anyway, it's not to say that that's exactly what was going on here, but that's kind of what was going on here, because here's the thing, and I'm reading this from Axios specifically, but I've heard about this story, talked about it a little bit earlier today with family, and it baffles me. So Amazon apparently had this service within their Amazon like brick and mortar stores, right? I've never been to one. I don't even know if one exists near me. But the point is, it was called the Just Walk Out system, and the idea, and it's something that they've kind of been doing for a while, or have been evolving for a while, heading towards for a while, is that you put items in your cart and you just leave the store because it charges you based on AI. So here's the thing. This, as far as I heard in the past, had sort of been implemented already because you would use like your phone. Again, don't quote me on this. I haven't experienced it myself, so I might get some of the details here wrong. But you'd basically like use your phone to scan an item that you put in your cart, and then as you leave the store, as you pass some kind of security-looking device, the phone would then say, okay, they left the premises, go ahead and charge them for all the things that they purchased, right? Again, I'm sure that I've gotten some things inaccurate here. I don't work for Amazon. I don't know all the details. I don't even know if it was fully implemented, but that's at the very least kind of the details that I heard. In this case, what they had sort of touted was that you kind of didn't have to use your phone anymore. You would pick an item up off the shelf and put it in your cart, and it would use cameras and sensors to detect the items that you were buying or putting in your cart, and then when you left the premises, it would charge you for those items. Except it was saying it was using like AI and deep learning to scan these items and know exactly what you were getting and then charge you for those. But that's not really what was happening. Like maybe in part. No, what they were actually using, at least for about 70% of the purchases, was overseas labor from like India. And what bothers me about this is that, at least from my research, India has a much lower minimum wage than here in the United States. And because of that, you can just pay people less over there, right? And so to say that this is an AI-driven process, and yet it was being manually overridden by people in another country, not cashiers here in the US or whatever country the Amazon store you're in is located, right? And so thus, this is just a way to circumvent having those cashiers in the first place, thus paying less people. And it's kind of twofold, actually, because you could ask yourself, well, isn't that kind of what automatic, self-checkouts, for example, do? Yeah, but here's the difference. With a self-checkout, you still physically have to pay it. Sometimes it's with a phone, sometimes it's with a swipe of a card, sometimes it is with cash. But the reason that Amazon wants to avoid all of those things is because if it can separate you from your money physically, then you're more likely to spend more money. What do I mean by that? Well, I can say this from experience. It is so much harder for me to hand somebody a $100 bill than it is for me to swipe a credit card for $100. And it's still harder for me to swipe a credit card for $100 than it is for me to use my phone and say, yeah, that's a good purchase. Oh, that was 150. I'm out 150 bucks now. I kind of regret that, right? It takes you further and further and further away from the thought that you're spending money in that moment. And that's what they want. They want you to spend more money. So they want you to be in the mind frame that you're in the frame of mind that you're not spending that money, or rather that it's just not having the effect on you that it has until you get home and then realize, oh crap, I just blew 150 bucks or whatever, right? And so in a nutshell, it's more money for them, obviously. So of course they're going to invest in that technology. No, what gets me about this though is the fact that it is using this sort of exploitative labor, because on the user end, on the buyer end, they're still getting everything they want. You're walking out of the store without ever taking your phone out, taking your wallet out, taking anything else out. You just put the items in the cart, you go, and you're good, right? So they have done the thing they wanted to do. They have separated you from the money as much as they really physically can, honestly. I'm sure there are other ways that people are going to prove that wrong, but like, at least that I can think of at the moment. But they're not removing entirely the fact that there are workers in the background doing this. They've just taken it from a country where the minimum wage is still pitifully low, in some states $7.35, like it is where I am currently. Actually, I think it might have went up recently to 12 something, but point being, to a country where the minimum wage, like I said, is much less. On top of that, I should mention too that there are a lot of times, even in the US, where you can very easily circumvent or go around those minimum wages. There are a lot of loopholes in it, and the same is obviously true for other countries as well. Again, I can definitely have some of this information wrong, but the point I'm trying to get at is that this had such a high failure rate, and that was never information that was given to the customer, right? They weren't transparent about this. They weren't like, oh yeah, on occasion we're going to have to use, outside intervention, if you will, to make sure that what you're getting is the correct thing. And the thing is too, because these workers were sort of using this to oversight, to overview the AI, they're also getting a lot of information about you and about your buying habits and stuff too. So they're kind of benefiting twofold. Again, I'm sure that, companies like Walmart and et cetera can do that too, even when you spend cash. So like they still can get that information either way, but that's a separate issue. Anyway, the reason I wanted to talk about it is because I touched on this issue in a previous video briefly, where I talked about my experience with wholesaling, right? And I'm going to kind of rephrase that here, because I talked specifically about wholesaling with houses and what I thought I wanted to do, because I really liked the idea of working for myself. I still do, obviously, but the idea that I thought at this point in time was that, oh yeah, I'll be able to like buy houses, and I love interior decorating stuff, so it'd be like a shoe-in for that kind of work. And then at the same time, I get to like flip houses, until I realized just how predatory this actual market was, right? It's not designed around buying and selling houses. It's designed around taking advantage of people in their situations and manipulating people and their relationships and lying and cheating, and it's gross. It's gross. That's not to say that wholesalers are gross, because I think you can do it ethically, but the market built around it is not ethical, and that's the point I'm getting at, right? And so I was looking into this, and I was learning information from this YouTube channel, and unfortunately I don't remember it because this was literally like 5 years ago, but I watched this channel and I didn't like the presenter very much. Immediately I could tell that something was not gonna jive between the two of us, but at the very least I can learn some information from this, right? Because there was another person teaching about this too that I did really like. He was very transparent about things. So anyway, I'm watching this guy who's giving these seminars, and of course, absolutely, they're paid seminars, or at the very least trying to upsell you things, because make money with, I guess, everything you do ever is just the new norm, right? But also on top of that, the information that I started learning from this was disgusting to me, because, and maybe I'm lucky to have had this experience, I heard this guy talk about Filipinos, for example, in such a just horrible way. Here's what I mean, right? So he was talking about, as part of wholesaling, right, you need to be able to contact people with cold call, right? However, that can be stressful for a handful of reasons. A, because a lot of these people are going to be like, how did you get my information? And that can be stressful to explain, of course, saying, oh yeah, the fact that you're being foreclosed upon, that's just public record, yada, yada. But also on top of that, it's just generally cumbersome, right? Because when you cold call someone, you have a very low chance of them reciprocating whatever your demand might be, right? If you're calling them and saying, hey, I'm interested in buying your house, that's weird, because as the person who has that house, they didn't expect a phone call, so it's just really weird when out of the blue they get a call, and it can very easily sound like a scammer. The point I'm trying to get at is that there's like probably well under a 1% chance that a person picks up the phone, and then a smaller chance than that they actually are like, oh, okay, this actually sounds like a pretty cool opportunity, and then you're going to try and take advantage of them from there. So it's disgusting, but the point is you're, again, removing yourself from these people, right? So this guy talked about how he wanted to become a billionaire because, of course, but also as he was talking, I kept listening and getting these little red flags where he talked about basically, oh yeah, this business is built around a handful of things, including that cold calling. But he didn't want to do any of those parts. The only points where he wanted to participate in this business was the money-making part, right? Everybody else can do the work and he'll just siphon off the majority of the profits because, again, this is a terrible, terrible person, right? But I didn't see that at the time because I was learning about this new market. What I did learn, and the thing that probably flipped that switch for me, was in one of these seminars, he said that he hired Filipino people in the Philippines, rather. I should make specify that. They're not American citizens. They're over in a different country, which separates you from them. So you feel people can feel a little less sympathetic towards them, right? Empathetic towards them. But also, the reason that he stated doing this was because they just had a better work ethic than Americans, man. And no, that was not the reason he was doing it, because at the time he was doing it, their minimum wage was much lower. He was doing it because he had to pay them less money. Full stop. That was it. And I said I was lucky because at this point in time, I had just gotten out of a job where I worked with a ton of Filipino people. And they were some of the most lovely people that I had met. I freaking adore them. And the thing that I loved about this was that they were no different than anybody else there. They didn't have a stronger work ethic. They talked shit about managers just as much as I did. It was so fun to work with them, right? There was no difference because we're all humans. Nobody has a stronger work ethic. It's this sort of coded racism behind all this stuff. And on top of that, using it to scapegoat the fact that, no, you just want to pay them less, because again, this whole operation, the whole point of this guy reaching his little roots out and trying to get into this business was to just take money, siphon money. He doesn't want to do the work. He just wants to be there to collect from every little thing that comes in, right? And that's the thing that bothered me, because this guy had such a sympathetic story. And I don't know if it was true, obviously, but he's talking about living in his car and how he had this old beat up, I don't know, Toyota or whatever, insert 90s cars that still run in the 2020s. Insane to think about, right? And so you hear about it and you're like, man, the fact that this guy brought himself from rags to riches, hold on, should I question that? How did he get to that, right? What does this say about this person? And I related to this person too, because he talked about stories where he had to get under his car and hit his starter and stuff. And I've been there. I've had cars that have been terrible, right? And so I was just in that exact position where I could relate both to this person who went from this rags to riches story and to the people that he was exploiting and justifying the exploitation of. And what I took from all of this is that so many people will just lie to you about being on the forefront, the cusp of some new endeavor, whether it is this endeavor of trying to build a business from the ground up like this guy claimed he was doing, or whether it is this new endeavor like Amazon is taking on with this AI, right? Where they're like, oh, look, we're taking advantage of this new technology. And here's the thing, they were using AI and deep learning models. It did exist. It wasn't fully using labor in India or whatever. But in part it was. And the thing is, if they were fully transparent with it, if they said, yes, we are going to still use labor, but they stayed, say, within the US, because it's always nice to have jobs, inside the borders. It's always nice to boost your own economy, sure, and this is an American company, right? So shouldn't they want that? As long as I, as a customer, know that the people who are doing the work are being properly compensated for that work, I can say, okay. Now, you know, my quarrels with AI aside, I can push all that aside and say, we have a disagreement here, or we have an agreement here, but at the very least, they're being fully transparent. I have all of the information I want up front. I know that the items I'm getting are being used to train this AI or whatever, and the workers that are overseeing this are in my country. I still have issues with aspects of it, like the payment separation I talked about, and obviously I have my own issues with AI. That's a separate video. But at the very least, I can respect the transparency, right? And that's the problem that I have, at least one of the main problems I have, is the lack of that transparency and trying to use it as this sort of springboard rather, to be like, look at this thing we're doing, we're innovating in this area. And like, no, you're not. A lot of these companies too, what they do is they see other startup AI companies and they go, okay, I'm going to buy that now, and now it's behind a paywall, so you can't have access to it anymore. Which is why companies like Amazon, like Google, like all these big, you know, multinational monopolies have so much control over these AIs already, because they just have infinite resources. Anyway, again, a separate video. Hopefully you guys did enjoy this video. I wanted to talk about this, though, because I honestly wanted to talk about it all day. Hopefully you get a little bit of an insight into who I am as a person, and I continue to grow and continue to learn from this stuff. And of course, if you did like this type of content, make sure to leave a like and subscribe. As I mentioned, it does really help the channel out. But of course, what I want to know specifically in the comments of this video are, what are your thoughts on this story? And I know it's not the only one. Amazon was just one of the two stories I wanted to cover, but I picked them because obviously they're a larger company and they're sort of they're not contracting this work out, right? They're doing it kind of themselves. At least, you know, more so than some of the other companies that were doing it, caught doing it, whatever. Point being, though, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And of course, we can take that conversation further over on the Discord. It is a Bionicle Discord, so, you know, keep the conversation within the scope of that server. But suffice to say, if you want to, you can also check out the Instagram, which will be linked in the description, and also Patreon if you want to help support the channel, support passionate people like me, and videos like this. I really appreciate it. I'll see you all in the next one. Take care.